Hello everyone! Welcome back to the channel, The Bold and Beautiful Always, and today we've got something really exciting for you. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Let's jump right in. At the Forrester mansion, beneath the gilded chandeliers and amidst the quiet hum of wealth and heritage, Eric Forrester stood completely motionless, the crystal tumbler in his hand trembling ever so slightly as Taylor Hayes, her voice laced with a hesitant tremor and decades of buried guilt, finally revealed a truth so stunning, so deeply unsettling, that the very air in the room seemed to shatter with the weight of her confession. She had been involved in a secret love affair for months, not with a stranger, not with someone unconnected to their tangled family web, but with someone impossibly close, someone Ridge never suspected, and as the truth bled from her trembling lips, Eric's breath caught and the blood drained from his face, for the name she uttered next was not only unexpected but world-tilting. It's Jack Finnegan, the very man who had fathered Finn with Lee. The same Jack who had once shattered lives with secrets of his own, and now, as Taylor's eyes brimmed with tears that reflected years of suppressed desire, loneliness, and emotional hunger, Eric staggered backward, gripping the edge of the Forrester grand piano, unable to fathom how this had all happened right beneath their noses. Ridge, entering the room moments later, wearing a confident smirk and a bottle of vintage wine in hand, ready to toast his father's latest design success, paused in his tracks when he caught the look on Eric's face, then turned to Taylor and asked what was going on, and Taylor, whose strength had always been in healing others, now looked like a ghost of herself, whispering Ridge's name as if it were an apology. Ridge blinked, confused, and Eric, without a word, gestured toward Taylor and rasped, "She needs to tell you herself," and with that, Ridge put the wine down, the gravity of the moment sinking in as Taylor's mouth opened and closed before finally she stepped forward and took Ridge's hands in hers and confessed everything, starting from the night of the charity gala, when Jack and she had shared a drink, bonded over their mutual sense of isolation and regret, and one thing led to another in the shadowy elegance of the Beverly Hills Hotel, and while it began as a moment of weakness, it evolved into something more, a secret connection that neither of them could explain nor bring themselves to stop, and Ridge, horrified, yanked his hands away, eyes burning with betrayal, because not only had Taylor lied to him, but she had done so while pretending to be the moral compass amidst the chaos of Brooke's scandals, and Ridge shouted, "You said you were different from Brooke. You said you were honest," and Taylor, sobbing, insisted she never meant to hurt anyone, that it was a private journey of rediscovering herself and healing from the scars Ridge had left. But Ridge, blind with rage and confusion, stormed out, slamming the door so hard a vase fell from a shelf and shattered, while Eric sank onto the leather couch, utterly gutted not just by the scandal itself but by the ripple effect it would have on Finn, on Steffi, on the entire Forrester dynasty that had already been rocked by so many waves of betrayal and secrets. And as word of Taylor's confession began to spread through the grapevine, thanks to Donna who overheard part of the conversation and accidentally let it slip to Katie at Il Giardino, it wasn't long before Steffi confronted her mother in the Forrester CEO office, demanding to know why she would ever choose Jack Finnegan, the man who kept Finn's paternity secret and almost tore apart his marriage to Steffi. And Taylor, emotionally exhausted, tried to explain that Jack had changed, that he was remorseful and kind and gave her something Ridge never could, consistency and true attention. But Steffi, furious beyond measure, accused Taylor of betraying their family and undoing all the respect she had fought so hard to rebuild, especially in the wake of her return to LA after years of absence. And meanwhile, Ridge took refuge at Brooke's house, of all places, visibly shaken, drinking scotch in silence while Brooke cautiously approached him, concern on her face as she gently asked what had happened, and Ridge, swallowing his pride, told her everything, his voice cracking as he admitted, "Taylor was seeing Jack Finnegan behind my back. She lied to me." Over and over, and Brooke, struggling to hide her shock, simply placed a hand on his and whispered, "I'm so sorry, Ridge," and while part of her wanted to scream that Taylor had no moral high ground anymore, another part of her simply saw the man she loved in pain and chose compassion over vindication, though the news quickly traveled beyond even the Forrester walls and soon Finn, devastated, confronted Jack at his condo, yelling, "How could you do this again? How could you sneak around with Steffi's mother? And Jack, surprisingly composed, admitted he had fallen in love, that Taylor saw him for who he really was, not just the man who made mistakes, but the man trying to redeem himself, and Finn, torn between his anger and the complex feelings he had about his birth father, stormed out, leaving Jack alone in his sorrow, while elsewhere, Lee, upon hearing the news from a stunned Sheila, who learned it from Deacon, who learned it from Hope, who read a cryptic post on Thomas's private group chat, exploded in rage, confronting Taylor in the Forrester atrium and calling her a traitor and a homewrecker, and though Taylor stood her ground, saying that her relationship with Jack was born of honesty and mutual pain, Lee slapped her, declaring she would never forgive her for ruining what little peace remained in their extended family, and as the fallout deepened, Thomas began to question his mother's choices, wondering how she could risk everything for a man with a history of lies and abandonment, and though Taylor defended her actions with conviction, saying she was allowed to find love again, even if it was messy, it was Ridge who remained the most broken of all, reeling not just from the betrayal but from the realization that he had driven Taylor into another man's arms, that his indecision between her and Brooke had left her emotionally vulnerable. And late one night, alone in the Forrester mansion, he stared at an old photo of the three of them, him, Brooke, and Taylor, and wondered aloud if he was the true villain in this story, while Eric, still stunned, tried to hold the family together by calling an emergency family meeting, but that only erupted into more chaos as Donna, Katie, Zend, RJ, and even a newly returned Bridget weighed in with their own thoughts and judgments, each one adding another layer of emotional carnage to an already fractured legacy. And as Taylor stood alone on the cliffside that had once been the scene of so many declarations of love and loss, she looked out at the crashing waves and whispered, "Maybe I was never meant to be with Ridge," just as Jack arrived behind her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder, silently vowing to stand by her even as the world turned against them, and somewhere deep inside the Forrester estate, Ridge sat with his head in his hands, asking himself how much more heartbreak one man could endure, and whether the love he had spent his life chasing was ever real at all, or just a dream shattered by pride, lies, and one final, stunning revelation that would echo through their family for years to come. The Bold and the Beautiful recap for Tuesday, July 23rd, reveals that Luna Nozawa's funeral was already done and handled according to Lee Finnegan. In Tuesday's B&B episode, Lee arrived at Il Giardino and formed a bond with Sheila Sharp, the only two people who seemed to care about Luna's death. Let's talk about the secrets and surprising moments. Even though Sheila and Lee didn't think Luna was a monster, Deacon Sharp still hated her for the terrible things she had done. Even so, Lee put the blame on Poppy Nozawa for all her neglect and thought Luna should have been given the help she needed early on. Lee responded when Sheila asked if there would be a service for Luna that it had already been completed and taken care of. Sheila wished she could have said goodbye to Luna, but Lee appeared to be hiding something. Fans should keep an eye out for B&B's shocking reveal that Luna is still alive in the upcoming episodes because all of this is leading up to it. Let's talk about Eric Forrester and a promotional video he showed Ridge Forrester and Brooke Logan on Tuesday's show. Brooke acknowledged that it brought back both happy and sad memories due to the emphasis it placed on Italy and previous Forrester designs. This time around, Italy wouldn't be the same because Ridge was with Taylor Hayes rather than Brooke. Ridge objected and stated that he was not invited on their business trip when Brooke mentioned the possibility of Nick joining them in Naples. In the end, Eric alone cornered Ridge to warn him that he might lose Brooke to Nick if he didn't get back together with his true love. Nick turned on the charm when he saw Brooke in the design office and raved about everything he wanted to show her in Naples. As he lusciously talked about building a boat and said he wanted to take Brooke out on the water, Nick stroked Brooke's arm. Brooke later came back to Ridge and said that she might have a better time on this trip to Italy if Nick was there. Since Ridge moved on with Taylor, Brooke didn't see why she shouldn't do the same with Nick. Ridge acted like he had no problem with Brooke moving on, he just didn't think Nick was the man for her. Ridge felt betrayed by Brooke's appointment as CEO during the takeover, so she eventually brought up the misunderstanding that brought them here. Now that everything was over, Brooke was willing to forgive Taylor for everything if Ridge just came back to her. Unless Brooke gave Ridge a last chance, she would have taken Nick to Italy. The Bold and the Beautiful spoilers for Tuesday, July 22nd, reveal that Nick Marone will have a grand gesture for Brooke Logan while Ridge Forrester's jealousy flares. Now that the news is spreading about Liam Spencer's miraculous recovery, there is nothing standing in the way of a wonderful trip to Italy. Stay tuned for updates on all the exciting romantic news to come. The bold and the beautiful spoilers say that Ridge, Brooke, and Nick have some love triangle drama ahead of them, and because of this, Eric Forrester will deliver a significant speech and insist that the trip continues. Eric will play up what a lovely time they're going to have and talk about all the exciting possibilities ahead of them. It is well known that Eric is of the opinion that Ridge and Brooke ought to reunite, so he will give a few more clues about that. However, Nick has been persuading Brooke to travel with him to Italy so that they can combine their professional and personal lives. As he tries to persuade Brooke that this is a good idea, it turns out that on Tuesday's B&B episode, Nick will carry out a grand gesture. It appears that Brooke will fall in love with Nick and wonder if starting a new chapter with him is the right move. The prospect of starting over with someone who isn't rejecting her like Ridge will entice a portion of Brooke. Once Brooke updates Eric and Ridge on Nick heading to Italy too, Ridge's jealousy will flare. Nick and Ridge are already in a lot of tension, and Brooke's information will only make Ridge more irritated. Nick will definitely be a part of this Italy adventure, even though Ridge won't want him around during their trip to Capri and Naples. Brooke and Nick will become closer in upcoming special episodes, but Ridge and his own love story with Brooke should not be discounted just yet. Ridge will keep dragging his feet on a Brooke reunion for now, but it's obvious that he still wants her deep down. It'll take some Italy shockers for Ridge to realize that, so don't miss all the twists and turns ahead. The Bold and the Beautiful took an emotionally intense and secretly charged turn on Tuesday, July 23rd, as the episode opened beneath a cloud of grief that blanketed Los Angeles like an oppressive veil of deceit, with Luna Nozawa's supposed death sending shockwaves through the city, but none more shaken than the unlikely alliance that quietly formed over cappuccinos and carefully chosen words at Il Giardino, where Lee Finnegan met up with Sheila Sharp, and the two found themselves bound in sorrow and confusion, both mourning a girl they believed never had a chance to begin with, although Lee's polished exterior and deliberate vagueness about the circumstances surrounding Luna's funeral sent Sheila's ever-curious mind spiraling with suspicions that something far more sinister was lurking beneath Lee's composed, doctorly poise, as Lee insisted that Luna's service had already been handled, past tense, final, and unreachable. But the way her eyes darted away, the tremble in her voice when she changed the subject, and the way she deflected Sheila's sincere yearning to say goodbye suggested more than grief, it suggested secrets, and viewers watching could practically feel the tension vibrating in the air like a violin string stretched too tight, especially as Sheila, who had once been labeled the monster of this town, insisted Luna was no monster and instead pointed a quiet accusatory finger at Poppy Nozawa, Luna's troubled and evasive mother, who had failed to recognize the signs, to intervene, to protect, and ultimately to save her daughter from the psychological spiral that had been building for years, something Lee, bitter and protective of her own sense of righteousness, agreed with all too easily, perhaps to avoid the more dangerous question, what if Luna was never dead to begin with, and Lee, ever the protector of her reputation and her son, had hidden her away for reasons no one could yet guess? Meanwhile, across town at Forrester Creations, the air was filled with a very different kind of intensity, the kind stirred by nostalgia, longing, and the ache of things unsaid, as Eric Forrester, in a moment of patriarchal orchestration, gathered Ridge and Brooke to unveil a promotional video filled with sweeping images of past Forrester designs, sun-drenched vistas of Italy, and glittering memories of fashion shows gone by, causing Brooke to gasp softly as the montage awakened a rush of bittersweet memories, of love won and lost in Italy's hills, of passion rekindled in the soft Italian moonlight, of betrayals that faded into kisses and weddings that seemed like fairy tales, though this time it was different, because Ridge, her eternal flame, was no longer at her side but instead aligned with Taylor Hayes, his other great love, leaving Brooke standing in the shadow of what might have been, and when she lightly mentioned the possibility of Nick Marone joining them in Naples, Ridge's reaction, tight lips, furrowed brow, and a snappish, "He's not invited," was more telling than he realized, betraying a sliver of jealousy he pretended not to feel, and Eric, ever perceptive, later cornered Ridge in the hallway with a firm but fatherly warning that he was playing with fire and could very well lose Brooke forever if he didn't stop dancing around his true feelings, which Ridge brushed off with forced nonchalance, though inside, his heart churned, and in the design office, as if summoned by fate, Nick met up with Brooke and unleashed a wave of charm that washed over her like the warm tide of the Amalfi Coast, stroking her arm, painting vivid pictures of the boat he was building by hand, of sails catching golden wind, of the two of them gliding over the sea with nothing but wine, stars, and each other, words that made Brooke's heart flutter even as her mind told her to remain cautious, but Nick's confidence, his history with her, and his offer of a new chapter all came together like a symphony, and later when she reunited with Ridge. Her words came laced with quiet challenge and potent sadness as she reminded him that he had made his choice with Taylor and that maybe, just maybe, she had every right to move forward too, perhaps with Nick, perhaps in Italy, perhaps far from the lingering pain of Ridge's indecision, and Ridge tried to act indifferent, to play the noble ex-lover who wished her well, but Brooke saw through him as easily as she always had, calling out the true root of their estrangement, the misunderstanding. Over the CEO spot during the Forrester takeover, a move Ridge saw as betrayal, but one Brooke had done with the company's best interests at heart, and now, with the dust settled and the wounds mostly scabbed over, she told him she was willing to forgive everything, even the hurt, even the Taylor affair, if he would just stop hiding and come back to her, come back to what they both knew still burned between them. But Ridge, trapped in a storm of guilt, pride, and lingering loyalty to Taylor, hesitated, and Brooke, catching the hesitation, offered one final ultimatum cloaked in softness. This was his last chance, because if he let her go now, she would not come back, not again, and she would be taking Nick with her to Italy, to start fresh, to let go. And just as her voice trailed off with the weight of all that could be lost, the scene cut to Eric rallying the troops at Forrester Creations with a passionate speech about how the trip to Italy was still very much on, that they would celebrate Liam Spencer's miraculous recovery, that they would embrace the future and the fashion and the family, and as he spoke, we saw flashes of each player reacting, Hope smiling, Steffi wary, Thomas brooding, and Liam, still fragile but alive and grateful, while Eric's gaze landed squarely on Ridge, silently urging him to fight for Brooke before it was too late. But even as Ridge processed all this, the ripple of conflict grew stronger, because Nick was not done yet, and in Tuesday's episode, he planned a grand gesture, one that would sweep Brooke off her feet even more, perhaps involving a surprise yacht, or a private dinner under the stars of Naples, something that would pull her further into his orbit. And as she pondered whether to step into that new chapter, part of her still clung to Ridge, to the idea of being his Logan once again, but another part, the part tired of being rejected, overlooked, and treated like an option, was ready to risk it all for a future that at least held promise. And once Ridge found out that Nick would definitely be joining them in Italy, his mask cracked, jealousy flaring like wildfire as he barked questions and muttered that Nick had no business interfering. But Brooke, seeing his reaction, only raised her brows and smiled faintly, because now he'd shown his cards, and that reaction told her everything. He still loved her, still wanted her, but didn't know how to say it. And meanwhile, Sheila, back at Il Giardino, sat in silence after Lee left, sipping her espresso, lost in thought, replaying every moment of the conversation. Every hesitation, every lie, and something didn't sit right with her, not just the fact that Luna's funeral had been held in secret, with no photos, no guest list, not even a public notice, but the way Lee clutched her bag tightly, the way she said had been handled as if it were a business transaction, not the memorial of a young life snuffed out too soon. And in Sheila's mind, a possibility began to form, a dangerous, shocking, thrilling possibility, that Luna Nozawa might not be dead at all. And if she wasn't, then where was she, and why was Lee lying, and who else knew the truth, and how long could a lie like that stay buried, especially in a city like LA, where secrets have a way of slipping into the light, especially when you least expect them to, especially with someone like Sheila lurking on the edges, piecing the puzzle together. And as the music swelled and the camera panned from Sheila's narrowed eyes to the glittering Forrester offices where Brooke stood between two men, one from her past, one from her present, and neither ready to let go, the scene faded out, teasing that Italy was not just going to be a trip of fashion and fun, but a crucible of old loves, new passions, hidden truths, and one earth-shattering revelation that could change everything. Because while Ridge grappled with his heart, and Brooke decided between safe love and a wild future, and Eric plotted reunions through beauty and legacy, and Nick dared to believe he could rewrite history, and Lee tightened the web of deceit she had spun, and Sheila stalked the truth like a panther in the shadows, somewhere far from the glamour and sunlight, behind locked doors and thick walls. A single light bulb flickered in a quiet room, and a barely conscious Luna stirred, eyes fluttering beneath lids bruised but healing, whispering a name, Finn? As a tear rolled down her cheek, because she was not dead, not even close, just forgotten, hidden, and waiting for her chance to return, to tell her story, to shatter the lies, and to explode every fragile truth that Tuesday's bold and the beautiful episode had dared to build on a foundation of secrets. Eric stunned. Taylor's secret lover exposed, Ridge destroyed. Bold and beautiful spoilers. Broken heart, Ridge breaks down as Taylor reveals her secret man, Eric shocked. B&B 2025. Face screaming in fear, Taylor's lover revealed. Eric in disbelief, Ridge's world collapses. Bold and the beautiful. Collision, B&B bombshell. Taylor's secret affair destroys Ridge, Eric confronts her. Firecracker, Eric's heart stops. Taylor's shocking secret man revealed, Ridge in ruins. B&B spoilers. Crying face, Ridge betrayed by Taylor's secret romance, Eric demands answers. Bold and beautiful. Man detective, who is Taylor's secret lover? Eric finds out the shocking truth. B&B 2025 twist.